minimalism is very rarely a good thing in video games. For me, at least. Because the word minimal usually translates to casual. And casual is a word I often translate to human waste.
Now there are exceptions, of course, as illustrated perfectly in Satchbag's Game Immersion and Limbo. Less can certainly be more.
One of my favorite indie games, KNYTT Stories, is all about minimalism. It handles gameplay perfectly by means of immersion. It's never about challenge, graphics, or narrative, but about pure escapism. It baffles me how well it can pull me from my reality, using only the simplest of MS Paint schlop to convey its setting. It's the same strength found in Limbo, only in place of depth and lighting, this game uses color and music. KNYTT Stories is a freeware stop-and-smell-the-roses platformer by Swedish developer Niklas Nygren, or as he prefers to be called, Niffless, because he's nifty like that. It's the second in a series of 3, the original being KNYTT and the latest being KNYTT Underground. First off, I don't know why they're all called KNYTT. With KNYTT sort of being a Swedish word for little creature, the main character of each game looks completely different. That looks like a knit, that looks like a woman, and that looks atrocious. In the original KNYTT, you play as a nimble, tiny little guy who gets abducted by aliens. Something goes horribly wrong, and the spaceship crash lands on a strange planet. It's not a long game, and there isn't much to it. It's a case in which the sequel renders the original useless, but what made it special was the message. It was a game to spend time inside, a peaceful experience that used nothing to conjure everything. You weren't there for the challenge, but for the simplicity, the atmosphere. Enemies are scarce, and platforming is centered more around discovery than action. You run off in any virtual direction, and you find things. It was nothing special, but I loved it. KNYTT Stories was a huge improvement. In this one, you play as Junie, a sort of mythical hero in ancient KNYTT folklore. Her story is basically whatever you want it to be. This game was more of a canvas than a production. It came bundled with its own level editor, so players were able to craft their own unique content. These user-made levels are known as the stories. The KNYTT Stories. 6 notable stories were produced by Niffless himself, and I'd say all of them are a joy to play. No matter the setting, whether it be a glade of mushrooms, a deep forest village, an ice cap, or an underwater laboratory in the middle of the ocean, Niffless always had the right music to set the mood. But let's talk about the newest KNYTT. The one that you have to pay for. KNYTT Underground, available on PSN, is the biggest game from Niffless so far. As the name implies, all is set deep underground, and it's gorgeous. You play as a girl, a sprite. Her name is Me. Long after humans have gone extinct, the sprites have all taken refuge underground, and it's Me's job to protect them all by journeying around the world and ringing the 6 bells of fate. This plot is the most begrudging thing about the game, because there is no plot. The game tries to have a plot through a mess of poorly written dialogue, goofy sidekicks, and irritating NPCs. I feel the KNYTT games were a lot better without any dialogue. It let you make sense of everything yourself. The player's solitude, immersed in music and surrounded by ever-changing shapes, gave these games an endearing quality of endless interpretation. The problem with KNYTT Underground is that it tries doing way too much. It's taken a step away from zen-like wonder, and is instead filled with frustrating trial and error. Difficult platforming puzzles outweigh mystic exploration, and to make things worse, the main character, for some reason, has been given the ability to turn into a ball. This bouncy ball mechanic, being some out-of-place nod to one of Niffless's very first games, adds nothing to the KNYTT experience. It's fun to control, but given the confined spaces and winding tunnels that make up the environment, it has no place in the game. And really, it only serves to make the puzzles that much more aggravating. It's because of these mistakes and the lack of curiosity that I didn't care to finish the game. KNYTT Underground is not basement-worthy, but it isn't at all bad. The elements that make KNYTT great are stronger than ever here. It's the most beautiful game Niffless has ever produced, and the music is absolutely top-notch. The visuals, the colors, the lighting, it blows me away, and it's truly an underground worth getting lost in. But it gets way too ahead of itself. I recommend the freeware games. It's storytelling without dialogue that made this series great, and I'll never forget the time I spent in its minimal worlds.